Well, there's certainly been a lot happening in the United States this week, and to break it all down, Professor of Political Science at Cypress College, Peter Mathews, joins me now. Thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, first of all, we've got a lot to cover today, but first of all, NATO has denied Ukraine's request to join the alliance. Let's talk through this. What's been the reaction? Will Ukraine be joining NATO anytime soon?
Well, the first thing we should look at as to why they're denied at this time, why they're denied, and that is that President Biden and NATO wanted to. Article 5 of NATO says that if one country is attacked by whoever, including Russia, all the other countries will be at war with Russia in order to defend the other country. It's a mutual assured treaty, mutual defense treaty, and that's the situation that Biden's concerned that if Ukraine were allowed to enter NATO right now, while it's at war with Russia, then that would draw all the rest of the NATO countries, including the United States, into war with Russia. The other thing is the anti-corruption. They're concerned about corruption in Ukraine, making sure the money doesn't get siphoned off by some wealthy politicians, and so that has to be also brought under control. And the last time this corruption issue occurred in January is that investigative reporters were able to pursue the corruption, and several government officials resigned. But it wasn't the Ukrainian government doing it. So Biden's concerned about those two things. And he says NATO that Ukraine is not yet ready to join NATO. So there's certain you have to wait for a while and see what happens.
Is this a case of the situation between Ukraine and Russia, the war is much worse than we are aware of?
I really think it is. And we've seen that some of the leaked documents that came out not long ago showing that the official posture of the Ukrainian government's news about the war is far more optimistic than what's actually going on. There's far more death and destruction on both sides, but especially on the Ukrainian side. And it's this horrendous carnage that has to really be wound down and stopped eventually, and maybe sooner than better, to come up with an agreement to end the fighting, because this is devastating. And I think that that's what the problem is with this war. It could drag on and on and on. And many people in the US and Europe are concerned about the kind of funding that we're providing and making sure the funding actually goes to the effort to defend against Russia and not in someone else's pocket. So this is a really horrendous situation. We've not in any way condoning the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but there's also NATO involved and the situation of NATO's expansion that was brought into the very beginning and even earlier.
And interestingly as well, we saw a very frustrated Volodymyr Zelensky taking to Twitter, of all things, to say that his NATO allies were showing his country disrespect.
He certainly did, and I think that he was so angry about that when he went to Twitter, it actually kind of backfired a bit on him, because then President Biden and the Western countries of NATO reacted and said, what's going on here? You should be more grateful that we're actually helping you as much as we are. And we really cannot let you into NATO right now, because that would cause us to go to war with Russia. The world cannot afford that. We cannot face the threat of a third world war, a nuclear war. So yeah, Zelensky backed down, and he got a bit more, a bit more kind about the whole thing and grateful in his pronouncements afterwards.
All right, well, moving on now, and Hollywood has come to a standstill as actors and writers unite in walking off the job. This is Hollywood's biggest strike in more than 6 decades. It really seems to be ramping up from what we're seeing here. What has been the reaction on the ground there in LA?
It's quite remarkable, because it is the biggest strike, like you said, and also the Writers Guild of America is on strike right now for the last 3 months, and now it looks like the SAG and AFTRA, which is the actors' unions, are also going to join them probably, and it has to do with a seminal inflection moment right now, because there's a lot of artificial intelligence. AI was getting involved here with capturing actors' images, and then the AI is being taught how to roboticize some of the actors themselves in terms of the actual production capability. And for example, people who are the background actors, so-called extras, AI has been used and can be used to replicate their images, and then not to hire them anymore for that whole series of acting. Instead, use the artificial intelligence robotics. And this is a problem, as well as the wages and the royalties that have been paid these actors need to go up, because there's streaming services that have been developed now, and streaming services actually don't pay the actors enough for what they're producing. They want more compensation for their own labor. They don't want the production companies to take all the money, as they've been doing to a large extent, taking a lot of it and leaving the actors in the lurch. These are some of the issues that are really confronting the creative profession of actors and musicians and other people in the field, in the union itself, the SAG-AFTRA union. There's a 98% vote to go on strike, so we'll see what happens now.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing the implications here in Australia as well. There's been multiple film crews and whatnot shut down in Queensland as well. But just on that topic of AI, I just want to quickly take you to this story. The Federal Trade Commission is investigating OpenAI, who are the makers of ChatGPT, over whether the chatbot has harmed consumers through its collection of data. Now, I'm just after your professional opinion here. In your role as a professor, ChatGPT, AI and the like, how are you finding this with students and what it potentially poses? Or are you on board? Is this something you'd like to embrace, or is it something we have to embrace?
I think it should be embraced but highly regulated, and we should be very skeptical of what the damage that it could do, because students can actually use AI to write their term papers, and we need to find some mechanism to be able we can check on that and ensure the students actually produce their own work, not the work of some robots. So AI is very important to be regulated. The FTC is taking the right stand at this point. It has to be regulated in so many other areas besides education itself, and that's misinformation, putting out misinformation rather, about individuals from whom it collects data. And that's something that even they haven't given permission for, and it still does it. And also, we want to know that the AI is not misused in the end and doesn't go haywire and create a lot of havoc in our security industries. That's very important as well.
Are students showing much more interest in AI and the likes of ChatGPT?
Well, I think they use it for research for sure, because it is convenient and it's extensive. But I warn them not to rely on it as far as their intellectual contribution, because if they just rely on that, they will not develop their own minds, their own creative facilities and critical thinking, which is so important in college. I try to emphasize that, and I structure my course so that they cannot rely just on AI to do well on the evaluations, including the papers and the critical thinking papers, and that we watch films and have them do video analysis on political issues, as well as taking multiple choice tests and essays that I have to monitor very carefully to make sure they're not using AI exclusively or too much.
It's a whole new era, and to think I didn't even have Google when I was at school. It's something else. Just lastly, before we let you go, another, keeping in the theme of strike action, the United Parcel Service is threatening a 10-day work stoppage. Now, impractical for many, but I tell you what, this could be hugely costly.
Hugely, and the estimates have been at least $7 billion for a 10-day stoppage. That's a huge amount of money. And it's going to hurt a lot of people. The supply chains will be interrupted. 25% of parcel packages are carried by UPS. 25%, that's a huge part of the economy. You're talking of prescription drugs, life-saving drugs that can be interrupted in delivery to people who need it. You're talking about Amazon delivery, which people have been relying on more and more since COVID hit, and we were using that. So what the UPS workers are saying is, look, we helped UPS make so much of extra money during the COVID crisis, the pandemic. We risked our lives and delivered everything on time. We deserve some of those rewards. The owner shouldn't be taking most of it. Some of that should come to us, especially the part-time workers. About half the workers are part-time, and they want to have a fair share of the income as well.
All right, Professor Mathews, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time this morning. We covered a lot of ground, very fascinating, and we appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.